All right, legends, gather around. Picture this. The US economy, the big kahuna, suddenly hits the skids. We're talking about a full-scale economic Ragnarok. But buckle up, because the ripple effects would be felt across the globe. With trillions of dollars flowing through the US economy annually, a recession wouldn't just be America's problem. It'd be like dropping a financial bomb in the middle of the global marketplace. Shockwaves everywhere. Countries with deep ties to the US would be hit hard, triggering job losses, volatile currencies, shuttered factories, the works. Let's dive into the 10 countries most at risk if the US economy tanks in 2025. 10. First up, we've got Pakistan. Pakistan's economy is already walking a tightrope, right? They're heavily reliant on remittances, cash flowing in from workers abroad, especially from the US. But if the US economy goes south, those jobs dry up and that cash flow, poof, gone, vanishes faster than a Loki illusion. Their foreign reserves are seriously low, barely enough to cover a couple months of imports. Add to that the US being a major buyer of their exports, textiles, rice, leather, and you can see how a drop in American demand would squeeze them. A stronger US dollar means a weaker Pakistani rupee, making imports like fuel and medicine way pricier, which just fuels their already crazy inflation. It's a recipe for potential disaster, economic and social unrest. Not good. 11. Next, let's head over to Cambodia. Cambodia's economy is basically built on garments and footwear, a massive industry. And where does a huge chunk of that production go? You guessed it, the US. If Americans tighten their belts and cut back on spending, guess who feels the squeeze first? Cambodian factories. Over 800,000 people directly employed by these factories, with millions more depending on them. Cambodia's tourism sector, which was booming pre-pandemic, relies heavily on American visitors, especially to those incredible Angkor Wat temples. A recession could easily trigger a repeat performance. Throw in soaring inflation as the US dollar gets more expensive, bad news for a country that uses it alongside its own currency, and you've got a recipe for some serious economic heartburn. 9. Now let's talk about Japan. This economic powerhouse sends a boatload of exports to the US every year. We're talking over $135 billion worth of everything from those sleek Japanese cars to cutting-edge electronics. If US demand takes a nosedive, so do Japan's exports. Japan already wrestling with a mountain of public debt. A weaker yen, which is almost guaranteed if the dollar strengthens, would make importing energy pricier, throwing their trade balance even further out of whack. The Japanese stock market, it's like a nervous thoroughbred, easily spooked by global uncertainty. Another US downturn could send investors running for the hills, shaking Japan's economy to its core. 9. Germany, the industrial heart of Europe. They export over $150 billion worth of goods to the US annually. Cars, machinery, chemicals, they make it all. A US recession means fewer buyers for German products. They ship over 500,000 cars to the US every year. Germany is grappling with inflation and high energy costs. A hit to exports could mean factory closures and job losses. Now let's zoom over to South Korea, the land of K-pop and cutting-edge tech. They're major players in the electronics and semiconductor game, shipping a cool $115 billion to the US each year. Almost half of that is semiconductors, the brains behind all our gadgets. If US demand for electronics goes south, it could trigger a semiconductor glut, just like we saw in 2022 when chip prices crashed 40%. South Korea's stock market is known for its wild swings, and it could take a serious beating. With households already drowning in debt, we're talking 106% of GDP. Even a minor economic hiccup could turn into a full-blown crisis. A weaker won means imports get way more expensive, adding fuel to the inflation fire. 8. Hold on to your hats, folks, because we're about to talk about Taiwan, the undisputed king of the global chip industry. These guys produce a mind-blowing 60% of all semiconductors, and a staggering 90% of the most advanced chips. Taiwan's economy is incredibly reliant on exports, with a whopping 70% driven by what they ship overseas. If the global economy slows down, chip demand could plummet. We're talking a potential 35% drop, just like they've experienced in the past. Taiwan's already facing slower growth, and a global recession could easily tip them into a full-blown recession. Let's take a trip to Thailand, famous for its stunning beaches and vibrant culture. Last year, Thailand shipped $42 billion worth of goods to America. American tourists are a major source of income for Thailand. During the pandemic, tourism revenue nosedived by $50 billion. With household debt at 90% of GDP, a US recession could push Thailand over the edge. Next up is Vietnam, a nation that's become a global manufacturing powerhouse. Almost a third of their exports, roughly $120 billion worth, end up on American shores. When the world hit the brakes in 2020, Vietnam's garment exports crashed, down over 30%. Roughly 35% of Vietnam's workforce depends on manufacturing and trade. Any disruption to that delicate balance could put millions of jobs in jeopardy. With the US being a major investor in Vietnam's booming electronics sector, a downturn could also stem the flow of foreign investment. Now let's head north to America's friendly neighbor, Canada. Canada and the US are like two peas in an economic pod. 75% of Canada's exports head straight south of the border. Oil, lumber, vehicles, you name it, Canada sends it to the US. A drop in US demand would hit Canada's economy hard, especially their energy and auto sectors. Remember 2020? Canadian crude prices plummeted. The Canadian dollar is sensitive to US economic changes. A US recession could leave many Canadians in a tough spot. Last but definitely not least, we've got Mexico. Mexico's economy is practically joined at the hip with the US. Nearly 85% of their exports head north. And we're not just talking tequila and avocados here. Mexico sends over 2.7 million vehicles to the US each year. During the 2008 US recession, Mexico's GDP nosedived. A similar scenario today would be devastating. So there you have it. If the US economy hits the skids in 2025, these 10 countries could be dragged under in the economic undertow. It's a sobering reminder of how interconnected the world really is. When one major player stumbles, the whole system feels the tremors. Governments and policymakers are already working to stabilize their economies and prepare for potential shocks. In the meantime, stay informed, stay prepared, and stay sharp.